August actually. I went on 3 separate backpacking trips and just had a wonderful, amazing time. And I wanted to share a bit of my adventures while I was away and to give you a taste of the scenery, what it was like, some of the interesting stories and funny happenings, and just to let you know the kinds of profound experiences that I had on that trip. As some of you may already know, I'm an avid backpacker, and so I've been doing this since I was in, grade school, maybe even a little earlier than that. Of course, my parents introduced me to backpacking first, for which I'm very grateful. And now my sister and I in particular continue to do that and really, really enjoy ourselves. And so 2 of the trips that I took were with my sister. All of them were 5-6 day undertakings. So it was quite a bit of fun. So they're longer trips, and we really enjoyed ourselves in doing that. I went to different places, ones I hadn't gone to before. We typically go to places that are kind of here in the Pacific Northwest, but we decided because of various factors that we wanted to explore beyond our usual places. And so we kind of went beyond our comfort zone, which was a lot of fun. And we also have been exploring a lot more off-trailing. So we're following trails to a certain degree and then going beyond those trails to secret places where we get to enjoy really beautiful things that often others don't, or if they do, it's probably mountaineers that are looking at other peaks and see these things along the way. So in any case, the 3 places we went to are the Purcell Mountains in the Kootenays here in British Columbia. That's kind of a southeastern part of the province. And then I did my own trip, a solo trip, Waterton National Park, which is in Alberta, southwestern Alberta, and just south of Calgary. And then my sister rejoined me, and we went to Cathedral Provincial Park in British Columbia. So this is kind of mid-southern, kind of closer to the west side of British Columbia. It's about 4 hours from Vancouver. And so I kind of want to go through segment by segment what we experienced, what we saw, give you some footage, and also describe some of the kind of, the ins and outs of it. Say, for example, like eating or traversing different terrain types, different paces. So you'll see in this adventure and these adventures that we had that, we're going faster and slower depending on the terrain types. And so, just sharing a bit of that experience with you. To hike really quickly to very beautiful places and then take our time. So we kind of hurry up to slow down. And that's exactly what we did with Purcell Mountains. So we kind of hoofed it through the first 20K, which was a fairly gradual increase or grade at first, but then it got, more steep as we went along, as we went to Earl Grey Pass. So it was difficult at the end, and certainly 20K was exhausting. And so once we got to Earl Grey Pass, we were happy to camp for the night and eat and so forth, especially since the next day we were now going to go off trail. And of course, my sister has made me swear not to share where we went. So of course, I won't be providing details on where exactly we went next. But we needed to conserve our energy to be able and ready to take on that off-trailing. Now, my sister did a great job of kind of threading the needle through all kinds of cliff bands and kind of focusing on areas where there are open boulder fields, which is easier to traverse than, say, vegetation. And so she looked at satellite imagery. She looked at things like FatMap, which is a great tool. It's a 3D tool that allows you to kind of see things from all sorts of different angles. And she was able to come up with a game plan for us to go 4K off trail. And that was a really fun and interesting experience. And I have some footage about, you know, how that went and what it looked like while we were in the trenches. So I won't give you any of that away. Once we arrived, we got to a place that was a Alpine lake, a very deep blue turquoisey Alpine lake, right in front of this huge glacier. And it was absolutely stunning. It was kind of out of a fairy tale book or an adventure novel. And we brought, in fact, speaking of adventure novels, we brought the second book of The Lord of the Rings with us, did a little Tolkien. And the weather was kind of intermittent, raining, and then it would be a bit sunny, and so it was quite variable. And so we did find ourselves at moments in the tent, and so it was nice to have the book along to read to each other and to kind of imagine the things that they were going through, and very much paralleling some of the challenges we encountered, especially out in the bush. And so that was a lot of fun. And then when it was sunny, we would go out and we would kind of explore further beyond our camp, trying to get to the glacier. We were blocked by a few different bodies of water to get there, so we didn't actually make that happen. But we got pretty close, and it's just, I don't know, it just kind of, there's something about being so close to something so big that puts you in just the right, I don't know, size. Like sometimes, you know, myself or even society at large, I think we can largely blow our importance out of the water. And it's not to say that we're not important. It's just, I think there's something healthy about noticing what's bigger and what's been there at a bigger time scale. And so that's always like a really oddly soothing and kind of reassuring thing. And so I always really enjoy that as part of the Alpine, is remembering that I'm one part of a much larger whole of things, and things have been happening over a much larger time span than my small life, or my kind of short life.
Show us how it's done.
Bushwhacking in the Purcell Mountains, showing us how to do it. You know what? Slide alder. It's something else. It's slow going. Yeah, I see what you mean. Anyways, we're gonna leave Liz and go to more pleasant thoughts of waterfalls and beautiful glaciers and the lake that we came from. Oh, how beautiful. It's all well worth it, right, Liz?
I just have so much up my crotch right now.
Well, I'm here in the Purcell Mountains along, off trail, but the trail we started with was Earl Grey Pass, which we got to after about 19 kilometers, and then we went off trail and found ourselves in this very beautiful valley. You can see the river down below there, and there's this magnificent waterfall all the way along up. Anyways, it was 4 kilometers off trail, but it took us all day. So that's my sister and I, and it was a bit of a slog through slide alder, up and down, elevation gain. Here's the stunning topography here in the Purcell Mountains. We're basically perched way up high. 2,100 meters to be precise. That's the way we came. Maybe I'll draw a little map on the... It's just so beautiful up here. So peaceful. Next up was Waterton National Park. And again, this was a solo trip that I thought would be me predominantly alone, but basically there were so many other people, well, not so many other, but there were other people on the trail. And so at each camp, I found myself communicating and connecting with people and getting to know them from all sorts of different places, some from France, some from Vancouver, you know, where I'm from, Calgary, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. And so it was really cool just to connect with people and talk and get to know them, and have, you know, both the fun, silly laughs, and then also the kind of serious talks about all the things that are happening these days. And so I really enjoyed that. And that's some of the benefit of going solo, is that you can be more open to that kind of connection with other folks. Now, that said, I also did have some 2 nights all by myself. So that's because, once again, there's a theme here. I went off trail, and this time I did that by myself. And it was interesting because it was a different experience than when I did it with my sister. Predominantly, I've been doing off-trailing with her, and there's a certain degree of confidence that comes with having a second person there. Now, that said, I'm very safe. I have a device called the InReach, or the Garmin InReach, so I can call SOS at any moment. It's GPS or satellite connected, and you know, they'll, depending on an assessment, call in choppers. So it's not like it's ever, you know, life-threatening, but certainly, you know, there's risks involved in doing that type of activity, and at Waterton, I did kind of face those risks down. And I have a whole lot of footage about that in terms of some of the decision making and the challenges that I experienced around that. And I did get to a place after doing something very challenging, and there was a certain degree of danger involved in what I did. That I, at some point, especially once I was done doing that and set up camp, I actually felt really trapped, which is amazing to kind of think there's this beautiful context, and because of this effort that I've made, I suddenly don't feel safe to get out of that situation. And so there's kind of emotional layers that I got into there, and it's interesting how kind of the power of the mind, really. That's one of the things I learned, in that the next day I started to explore other options for getting out of that basin. And I found a much shorter route, and I then had a much more pleasant time. The rest, I had another day and a half there, and I was able to relax. I saw the place as very friendly, very beautiful, and just inspiring. But before that, I saw it as a kind of threatening and grim place, and kind of removed from people. And so it's really interesting, you know, how from one day to the next things can change so drastically. And so that was one of the really interesting learnings. So even within backpacking, it seems simple enough. You walk some distance and then you set up camp, but all the while you're actually learning all these very deep lessons, and having direct experience of something, whether it's facing down a fear or making just tough decisions in the field. Often sometimes weather comes in very quickly, and so you're having to figure out what to do. Do we take shelter? Do we keep going? And so there's all these very dynamic factors happening in the backcountry that are very interesting to try to navigate. And of course, there's, you know, it's all in real time, so it's not like you can hit a pause button and then be like, okay, now what do we do? So you really have to, you know, face these things down in a timely manner. Hey folks, I'm here in Waterton National Park, and it's day 2 of my backpacking trip. And as you can see, it's glorious out here. Just mountains upon mountains, some streams. I'm also next to a lake that I'll, I think, pan around to show you if I can. I'm on a cliff edge here. You can also see some in the background here, this area where there was a forest fire, I think about 2017, so almost 3 years ago. And so there's that impact, and then you can see the little lake I'm sitting next to. That is Lone Lake on the Takamina Trail, and I spent a good 3 or so hours just on the shores, went for a nice dip. So I'm just in my element, having a great time here. The marmots are a little upset at me. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. They're peeping all about. They're kind of like, what the fuck? Anyways, I went to a little bit of a high point so I could see this, and of course also the beautiful background as well. So I'm here at Lynham Lakes in Waterton National Park, and it was quite a trek to get here actually. It was about 4 or 5K off trail. And I'll show you in a minute the section that I went down. As you can see, most of what's behind me is cliffs. So you have to kind of do a circle around them to get to a place where you can go down. And even that was a bit challenging. A lot of scree, so a lot of loose rock, which took me all day. It was a 14K trek, and it took me all day. Usually that kind of thing I do about 4 or 5 kilometers per hour when it's good terrain, but when it's not, it really slows you down. Anyways, I'm really glad I'm here now. I'm safe. Nobody else here. It's just me. I was told this is a backcountry campsite, but I don't think anybody else is doing the effort to get here because it's difficult. But when you do difficult things, you get rewards like this. So I'm here atop a bit of a bowl above Lynham Lakes. Lynham Lakes are just to the left here, and I've been scouting out a second off-trail route. It's actually shorter, and I just did half of it, and it's actually easier than what I did yesterday. I did 5.5 kind of all the way around and then down. And this is kind of threads a needle through a bit of cliffy area. And so I think what happened is I looked down, you can see above there, I looked down right there, right there, and I was like, fuck no. But just to the left of it right here is actually really easy, no significant slope angle shading route up. So guess what? I'm gonna take the 2K option because I don't need extra trouble and I like to enjoy myself. So anyways, it's very relieving for me to see that there's an easier way up, that I don't have to spend 5 hours doing 5K. So 2K in about an hour is really nice. Cathedral Provincial Park. Holy smokes. For anybody in Vancouver, this is an awesome destination. About 4 and a bit hours away from Vancouver. So, I mean, within the large scheme of things, that's really close. And it's so beautiful. Now, there's different ways of getting to the provincial, or into the core of the provincial park. You can take this kind of 4x4 military style machine that kind of trucks you up into the heart of it, which is awesome. It does cost money though. It's about 120 or so bucks. I think that's round trip. So if you're wanting to kind of get right into the good stuff, that's a really good option. Now, my sister and I took a different option. We actually took another trailhead. It's called the Ewart Creek Trailhead. And it just gives this really nice gradual entry into, and free entry into the provincial park, and kind of different views and angles of the core part, which we really enjoyed. It is, I think, 18 or so kilometers to get in. So, and we did it in one go because, again, we're impatient to get to the good stuff. And we got in, and funny enough, kind of, our first night was just kind of in some like a Alpine grassy field with some peaks in the distance. And then the second night we stayed at what's called Lady Slipper Lake. Now, we did not do a lot of trip planning. We originally were supposed to go to the Olympic National Park. That didn't happen because the border is closed. That's in Washington State. Then we said, oh, let's go to South Chilcotin Provincial Park, which is north of Pemberton, so past Whistler. And then the weather wasn't looking so great there, as in it was supposed to be cold and possibly raining. And so that's when we shifted gears to further east, because typically in that part of the province, it's a lot warmer. And in fact, it was sunny the whole time and scorching hot, like really nice scorching hot, like 25 to 30 degrees Celsius every time. And so we had maybe 3 days notice before we switched gears. And so as a result, I didn't do as much as I should have to learn about what was on and off and whatnot. So we got there and we're like, oh, nobody else is here. This is great, and we're, whistling along and excited to set up camp beside this beautiful alpine lake. There were goats meandering in the back. I've got some footage of that. And then we got a surprise visit, a very quick and sudden visit from somebody who was informing us in very colorful language that we were in a place that was not permitted for camping. So, oops. And this person was absolutely right. We were not in the correct place. Their delivery could have been a little bit nicer, but in any case, before she left, she kind of threw a map at us, and as a way to kind of seal her message. And I got to study that map a little closer, and actually she gave us insight into a much better route off trail than I had planned. So you don't always have to, like, for me, what I learned from that is, yes, the message might be negative, but not everything in that is negative. And so always to look at the pieces from messengers, however they may deliver it. So anyways, that was a pretty funny moment, although it kind of took us aback because we were in this peaceful mode, and then suddenly somebody's at very intense energy at us. The next night we had plans to do an off trail, and we explored it as far as we could, and then we found it to be uncomfortable for us to proceed. And we actually take on a lot of risk when we go out into the backcountry, and so it was really interesting to face that type of scenario and be okay with saying, you know what, not this time, right? And instead we relaxed on this mountaintop, overlooking kind of the trail we would have, or not even trail, it was off trail, or the ridge line we would have gone along, and it was kind of facing south, so we were looking into the United States, which is really cool. So kind of a salute to the US, but not able to enter it. And I didn't feel any disappointment or annoyance. I was curious, right? So the map said we could have been able to, and eventually the next day I was actually able to find another pathway down. And so that was fun to explore that. But again, I don't know if I would do it with a backpack. I would do it with like a day hike, or, put the packs down, do it, and then come back and whatnot. But, there's certain parts, especially if they're heavy cliffs, or a lot of cliffs around. It's just, and when you're starting to get into different classes of scrambling, it does become much more difficult with a backpack. So we carried on. The next part was Hayward Lakes, which was just, again, another stunning alpine lake, very peaceful. We had it to ourselves for much of the time that we were there, which was very nice. Again, fantastic solitude. We got to read, we got to kind of explore the area around, kind of rest our bodies, which we had done quite a bit of up and down, a lot of elevation gain and loss. And so it was just nice to take a day off and just really soak it up. And I did a lot of, I don't know if swimming's the right word for it, but a lot of dunks in the lake, which if it's a hot day and there's a cool lake, it's just such an awesome mixture. So we just really thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. And
it's Liz. Coming through. 1, 2, 3, 4. Mountain goats. Yeah. And they're gone. Okay, so at the bottom of this cliff-like thing is a cairn. So it's indicating something, but I don't see another corresponding cairn anywhere up. But look at this rock face here. And that is, somewhere above that is the trail. Huh, interesting. But you can go down a little bit further, and then you hit a bench right there. And then you can go up a bit of a chimney stack. So that's an option. But anyways, here's the beautiful scenery. That's Mount Ewart. In the distance you have the US, in the middle of the screen. So it's Pope and Cathedral. And then off to the right you have Deacon. And then in the immediate foreground is Matriarch.
Wow.